Joining us now is Tristan Özbey, the Hungarian State Secretary for the Aid of Persecuted Christians and the Hungary Helps program. Mr. Secretary, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Good evening. Well, just over the last year, 1 in 8 Christians worldwide faced persecution. There were more than 4,000 Christians killed, churches attacked, and worshipers arrested or jailed. You know, these numbers are staggering to see. So are things getting better or worse for religious freedom around the world?
Religious freedom is violated in more and more countries. There are very staggering statistics. There is a statistic which says that 3/4 of the world's population lives in a country where someone's religious freedom is violated. And something that is barely mentioned at the international fora is that the most persecuted religious group in the world are Christians. As you have correctly stated or shown on this diagram before, 340 million people are persecuted or discriminated against because of their faith in Christ. Every day, 13 person is martyred because they are Christian. Yet you don't hear this topic in the Human Rights Council, in the United Nations. You don't hear this topic with the big human rights advocacy groups. They are focusing on different type of discrimination that are perceived to be larger problems, but this. In the Hungarian government, we have recognized the fact that Christianity is the most persecuted religious group in the world. We hold that this is the biggest human rights crisis of our time and also the most concealed human rights crisis of our time.
Yeah, I don't think most Americans who get to practice their religion so freely fully appreciate some of the persecution and restrictions that occur around the world, and I appreciate what you're doing. I want to focus, though, on a new law in Hungary that would remove sexual education from schools for children under 18. And the argument is that these kind of conversations should happen at home between parents and their kids rather than at school. The law is facing a lot of pushback from the LGBT community. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on with that?
Yes, Hungary is a Christian country. It has been a Christian country for 1,000 years. So this is why the Hungarian government took it as a national mission to protect persecuted Christians, but we also stand for Christian social values, Christian family values. And among them, we have passed, the Hungarian legislation has passed a law which is a child protection law. It has been, through false allegations, portrayed as a homophobic, anti-LGBT piece of legislation, yet the only purpose is to protect children. It consists of 2 parts. It amends 2 sets of Hungarian pieces of legislation. One is imposing stricter sanctions on pedophile crimes. The other one is protecting children from age-inappropriate sexual education and exposure to sexuality. The position that we, as the Hungarian government, have is that parents should have an exclusive right to conduct the education of their children regarding sexual orientation, because parents know that better. And it is not allowed, it should be prohibited that different obscure advocacy groups, including LGBT advocacy groups, enter kindergartens and schools in Hungary and educate our children without the consent of the parents.
Wow. Mr. Secretary, I do want to get your take on this because the pandemic has shed light on Christian persecution in new ways, with needed supplies and medicines being denied to Christian communities in countries like India and Myanmar, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Yemen, Sudan, and more. Many people may not know that. And on top of that, churches were losing funding in those places. So explain what your organization, Hungary Helps, the program does for these communities and how people can get involved if they would like to help as well.
Well, the Hungarian government has set up a dedicated government unit for the aid of persecuted Christians in 2016. My title is State Secretary for the Aid of Persecuted Christians, but the government unit has already a message to the world about the importance of this issue, but it wouldn't worth anything if we haven't started a humanitarian aid program right away. And in the course of the past 4 years, we have supported humanitarian aid to Christian communities in more than 40 countries in the world. And by that, we have reached 250,000 Christians who are persecuted. We have enabled them to remain in their homeland or return to their homeland from refugee camps. We are providing humanitarian fast relief after anti-Christian terror attacks. We are providing long-term humanitarian aid to Christian IDP, internally displaced communities. Budget-wise speaking, the biggest part of our donations are going to the reconstruction of infrastructure in Christian communities. We have supported the reconstruction of churches. We have supported the reconstruction of housing units, hospitals, education centers throughout the Middle East, but also in sub-Saharan Africa. Some other governments are supporting such reconstruction, but none of the Western governments are supporting reconstruction of churches. And that's because of the idea of PC or a false sense of impartiality prohibits them to support directly Christians, who are the most persecuted people in the world.
Wow. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for what Hungary is doing to help persecuted Christians around the world, and thank you for updating us here tonight.
If you would like to contribute to our cause, please visit hungaryhelps.gov.hu. So that's hungaryhelps.gov.hu, and you will find the instructions there.
Thank you, Secretary Özbey.